What up, friends? Life has been putting me in very uncomfortable positions, and today I'm going to be reviewing Ariana Grande's latest album, Positions. This is ever-popular singer-songwriter Ariana Grande's latest output, only a year after her fantastic album Thank You Next, released back in 2019. In comparison to its predecessor, Positions is much lighter, a lot less melancholic, as well as Ariana seems to have sort of come to terms with the past trauma that she talked about on Thank You Next. Unfortunately, while I don't want to imply that Ari writes better music under more heavy circumstances, Positions is incredibly bland and not nearly as adventurous when compared to the previous record. Though it has a newfound sensuality, it lacks a lot of emotional weight. Positions just ends up kind of floating around and existing with little identity to call its own. However, the album does start out with a pretty decent first impression with the first track, Shut Up. The dramatic strings, along with Ari's isolated vocals and harmonies, have a pretty warm sound to them. The flowing waterfall effect that both of these end up doing add to the theatrics, and they fit her nonchalant and uncaring attitude towards her critics and haters. It has a sort of film score type vibe that I think fits her aesthetic and sound pretty well. Next we have 34 plus 35. Guys. It's the sex number. The song largely continues the sound that she was exploring on Shut Up, although with an added trap beat to it and more humorous lyrics basically describing what you'd expect. Sis was down horrendous during quarantine. I actually do think it's pretty funny, though I wish the main beat enforced the sensuality of the song a little bit more. It kind of just stays in one place, and her flows, while not bad, just don't really have an oomph to them. Motive, however, is pretty good. It has a very sultry and groovy aesthetic to it. There's some dancehall influences in its beats, and Ari's smooth flows, they just fit right at home here. I also really like the clean transition to the more trap-focused beats during the chorus as well. It's a pretty seamless transition for the sort of two competing styles. Doja Cat also fits really well into the track, adding a bit of an edge to it while also supporting Ari's fear of a potential lover's motives after she has been kind of hurt by love in the past. With Just Like Magic, there's some pretty cool synths in the background, but the main beat is just too simplistic for its own good. This is especially true in the chorus. The lyrics are a sort of braggadocious anthem about her accomplishments in life. I find it a bit uninteresting, to be honest, especially when this sort of track was done much better on her previous album with 7 Rings. However, I do like the added angle about her coping with quarantine life and kind of just finding things to do. 6:30 is by far one of the blandest tracks on the album, and I don't like it. It has a very simplistic beat and probably some of the most uninspired lyrics on the entire album, and it's mostly just due to how she phrases the topic she's talking about here. The chorus is also incredibly lazy and repetitive. I do like the callback to the strings from earlier tracks on the record, and the bass line is pretty cool, but there's just not much else going on with this one. Safety Net is another track on the album. I think it's okay. The more fleshed out drum beat does help this one stand out a bit more compared to some of the other songs on the record. The haunting background vocals are a pretty nice touch, adding a sort of rare glimpse into the darker aspects of the record. And Ari's more sensual flows actually mesh pretty well with Ty Dolla $ign here. Their harmonies are also pretty heartfelt and add to this crooning jam fairly nicely. It doesn't have the biggest presence to it, and sometimes it just feels like it's kind of meandering around a little bit, but it's not bad. Now we have My Hair, which is absolutely the best track on the album. Honestly, probably one of the best tracks she's ever recorded. The 90s R&B flow and the vocals, along with that smooth bass line, they're fantastic. That chorus is also mesmerizing and a real highlight on what is already a fantastic song. The brass is expertly weaved in throughout the track, and it just adds such a sexy ambiance to it. The lyrics are intimate and delivered with a lot of passion. Her ending the track on the chorus as well, sung in a whistle tone? Like, wow, I'm impressed. West Side is another track kind of nearing the end of the record, and the sort of glitchy beat does make it stand out a bit. It almost has a vibe like you're rewinding a VHS tape while you're listening to it. I think the sparse and ambient instrumental does fit the more introspective nature of the song, and she's expressing also how she's gonna be a bit more picky going forward with her lovers, kind of expressing how she's going to start taking the time to find the one that's actually right for her. It's a pretty interesting topic, especially coming after her previous album, that shows growth in pretty cool ways. I actually would have liked to see this song expanded and fleshed out a little bit more. As it is right now, it's painfully short, but I feel like it had a good thing going, and it could have easily had another minute or so tacked onto it. Love Language is definitely another fun one. I love those extravagant strings and synths that just give off a feeling of bliss. The subtle keys are an elegant touch to contrast Ari's more playful flows and vocals. The chatter in the background of the track actually adds some cool ambiance to it, like you're talking to your lover in the middle of a restaurant or something, like a drama. The feelings of infatuation that are expressed here when you're talking to someone who you just share a connection with, like you're just made for each other, it's very well done. Obvious is a pretty good song that combines her hopefulness with a touch of somber emotions and feelings as well. The strings and the very deep beat are a good combination, and she has quite a variety of flows on this track to keep things interesting. I love that chorus too, and I feel like this is the perfect way for her to sort of write about how she found love again and she's able to be happy in relationships again. The dreamlike nature of this track is just perfect for stuff like that. Finally, we get to the ending track, POV, and this album does end things off on a pretty good note. It's a fairly simple and quiet outro, but I think it does fit the album well. That waterfall effect to her vocals returns here again, and it does fit this more soft and delicate sound. It's a pretty beautiful outro that lets her vocals shine and also puts more emphasis on the narrative. The water sound effects and the sort of breathing sound effects as well, they just add to the intimacy of the track. Like, you can tell she's in love. There's other tracks on this album like Off the Table, Nasty, Positions, that I didn't really cover, mostly just because they're just kind of redundant and they're just doing the same thing as the other songs on the album, so it's not much new to talk about. Positions, unfortunately, in my opinion, can't stack up to Thank You Next. The subject matter is less interesting, and the production really took a hit on this, too. A lot of them just sound like B-sides, to be honest. They don't do a lot wrong, per se, but that's just because they're not really doing much of anything to begin with. There's definitely some winners on here, though, especially with tracks like My Hair. Ari's at her best, I think, when she's doing 90s and experimental R&B, and I really wish there were more songs on this album that were like My Hair, POV, Love Language, you name it. All in all, to me it just seems like a seemingly rushed or uninspired project with some diamonds in the rough. I'm feeling a decent 5 on Ariana Grande's Positions. Kinda mid. Of course, we do have to talk about the album cover on the show, and I love this album cover. I kinda wish it was upside down to complete the trilogy, but whatever, that's besides the point. Great color combinations on here. I love the more pastel and soft look. I think it fits the sensuality of the album pretty well, especially contrasting the previous record. I don't really know how I feel about the little white border around it. I guess it kind of has like a Instagram picture vibe to it, which is kind of quirky and cute. But yeah, it's just a really good cover overall. Anyway, those are my thoughts about Ariana Grande's Positions. Did you guys actually like this one? Did you also feel like it was more B-sides to the last album or something like that? Let me know. And until the next one, farewell.